Hello, Interact. I hope that you've all been enjoying today as much as we have. You've been hearing a lot so far about strategy, leadership, and the cultural wisdom behind some of our favorite engineering teams. But now we're going to take a look at how those same teams are hitting the productivity, pipeline, and workflow goals that make them elite. This next panel is powered by some amazing engineering leaders that we get to see on a regular basis because not only are they customers of LinearB, but they've been very influential in shaping the way that companies are actually using LinearB. Let's dive into some insights on how these engineering organizations are thinking about their developers' productivity, how they think about improving their team, and how they use LinearB to make it all happen behind the scenes. So first, let me introduce today's panelist. It's my pleasure to welcome Paulo Almeida, a CTO at RabbitCare, Pini Shah, an engineering manager at Shippo, and Ricardo Abdallah, engineering manager at Pismo. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us at Interact today. Thank you. Yeah, so happy to have that. Good to be here. So let's get to know everyone first. So, Paulo, tell us a little bit about your team and what you're working on at RabbitCar right now.
Hi, everyone. So basically, my team is mainly focusing to what we call a broker, insurance broker. Um, we are the number three player in Thailand when it comes to insurance broker, and 60 people team, very new team, less than a year old. So LinearB was quite essential in order to get the right foundations to scale the team all the way to 200 people like we wish to.
Wow, I didn't realize you guys were so new in the industry. That's a lot of growth. So really excited to hear about your contribution today. Thank you. Pini, let's hear from you. Let everyone at Interact know a little bit about ShiftVow and what you're up to over there.
Sure. So, hello, my name is Pini Shah, and I have been working at Shippo for about a year now. Shipping and logistics can be complex, and this is exactly what Shippo is here to solve. We want to be the shipping layer for the e-commerce platform. My team at Shippo is focused on ensuring that we deploy quality software to our partners while enhancing engineering productivity and happiness. Over the last few years, I am very passionate about software engineering and how we can deliver tools and improve processes to increase productivity. And that's it. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Yeah, we're excited to have you too. And I can imagine with COVID and everything, how that impacted shipping and logistics. So curious to hear, how, working around all of that sort of stuff might have impacted you. So excited to have you on board as well. Ricardo, how about you? What great stuff are you up to over at Pismo these days?
Most of you probably never heard about Pismo. We are a next-gen cloud-based banking and payments company. Not a financial institution, but a company that provides cutting-edge technology for digital banking and fintechs. Pismo was founded in 2016 and is headquartered in São Paulo, Brazil, with offices in the UK, United States, and Singapore. And our operations are distributed across Latin America, North America, Europe, and Southeast Asia. At Pismo, I'm basically responsible for both card issuing and lending tribes, totaling 5 different squads and about 5 people. I'd like to understand my role in the company as responsible for ensuring engineers get proper support and the best possible environment to deliver great results.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you've got a lot on your plate. So excited to hear about how LinearB has helped you too. Thank you guys for introducing yourselves. Really appreciate that. And like I said, just echoing from the whole team here that we're excited to have you all. So the first topic that I want to cover is surrounding sort of what metrics matter. That's probably the number one thing that we hear from people, from customers when we first meet them, is that they need visibility into how their development teams are working. And that's something that each of you just echoed in your introductions. And so one of the things that I'm curious to know is what pain point were each of you looking to solve when you first came in contact or started to use LinearB? So Ricardo, why don't you start with that?
Okay, perfect. Well, at some point in 2020, we start scaling engineering very fast. So at that time, new engineers were onboarding every week, new teams being created. And although at that moment we already used, for example, cycle time as a leading metric, the problem was that each leader had its own way of calculating. So we had an absence of standards related to engineering metrics. Also, extracting useful data from our GitHub repos was a slow and a painful task. So it consumed a lot of energy from leaders and with a lot of variation of what was being collected for example. And yeah, that was the scenario that at the time. So in a nutshell, lack of standards related to engineering metrics and a manual and time consuming and error prone way of getting information about our teams.
Yeah, I can imagine that took a lot of time. Sorry, Paula, you have something you want to add in there?
Oh, that's very interesting. It is very similar to more or less what happened to me in the last few years. Um, Rabbit Care is quite of a new team, and that is a new challenge, but it was also a real opportunity to start things from scratch with a certain level of foundations and a certain level of standardization when it comes to these engineering metrics. That, like Ricardo said, for quite a few years, lots of us and lots of our managers that we manage have been collecting these metrics on a non-standard way and measuring something like cycle time. I was not aware of the word cycle time, but I was definitely measuring something like the end to end of a certain task. Um, LinearB really brought that granularity that help us to be effective when we take decisions about how to improve the software deliverability. Um, it also helps to abstract about the importance or not of a task, and that would be a conversation for another panel. But when it comes to are we executing things fast, and here is a standard way adopted by the industry, but it's very curious to hear that um, Ricardo and his team have been doing it for quite a while, extracting information from GitHub that is actually quite painful, and then trying to visualize it in a way that makes sense. I've tried multiple times with multiple technologies. I mean, never really brought the success that uh, LinearB simplicity, or at least the standardization and simplicity when it comes to the dashboards allows us to do. It's very curious to hear.
That's interesting. So it sounds like there's kind of two main threads here so far. One is standardization, like around what cycle time actually means, right? And then the other thread was just the pain that you were having around actually trying to extract this and then display it. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Another great metric I would say is the carryover. The carryover really allows you to display the work that is being not done and just being accumulated. And that is most of the time the main reason for slowness in big teams is the accumulation or the backlog of tasks that never actually got finished. So I feel that the carryover, sometimes even more than the code changes, can be a really good indicator for moving at the right velocity or not.
Heaney, how does that match up with, your experience when you first kind of came in contact with Linear V and some of the pain points you were having?
Yeah, yeah. So I think, and along the same lines as Paulo and Ricardo mentioned, right? Getting insights into engineering workflow is very critical. And to have that bird's eye view of your engineering organization was important. And we want to make an educated guess in terms of what metrics we want to use. And that's where LinearB can offer these insights. And And like any startup, right? We were also going through these growing pains. And so, for example, how fast can a new hire create their first PR? Or what were the bottlenecks in deploying and around quality and deployment of your products? And so I think finding those details and proving it with your data is much more valuable.
Awesome. So you bring up a really good point that I think segues really well into what I want to talk about next, which is mainly around, which metrics and data point that you're using, maybe at your level versus say at a leadership level to improve. And I think that you brought up a really good point, which is for teams that are growing, scaling, and hiring engineers fast, right? You want to be able to see how quickly they're getting up to speed. Paulo, you had also mentioned carryover work and why that's so important. So maybe Pini, maybe you want to start out with some of the metrics that or data points that you were diving into specifically to understand how fast or how slow it was taking for engineers to ramp up and what success with that looks like.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll quote a famous word from Drucker. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And so deciding on so deciding on the metrics to use is the most challenging part. And further, like getting consensus among engineering can also be tricky. So to be really honest, like deciding on these metrics really depends on the current dynamics, how the leadership style is at the stage at which your company is, right? A metric at a small startup can be totally different than a metric at a high growth company versus again a metric is completely different at an established company or a giant, right? So I personally like the Dora metrics and they make sense, but it really depends. I think the order and the magnitude depends on the company at what they are trying to achieve. Yeah, things like that.
Excellent. Ricardo, what about you? How does that match up to your experience and what different data points and metrics that you've been using in your specific use case?
Perfect. So first, I totally agree with what Penny just said. So metrics may tend to vary over time, depending on the level of maturity of the company. But nowadays at Pismo, I would say that our leadership tends to monitor more changes in metrics like cycle time or throughput or activity indicators. Usually trying to understand if something weird is going on. We try to identify anything that could mean an increase in the variability of the work our teams perform. So, for example, a sharp decrease in the deploy frequency could be something related to our CI/CD pipeline or bottleneck anywhere else. So, I think that management wants to see things more like that. Other important thing is to ensure work is being performed in a sustainable pace and fairly distributed across team members. So I personally like to see the number of PRs each developer has over some period of time to see if something is more focused on one or two developers and others were not doing things like that. But talking about our teams, I think they right now they are usually more focused on delivery and quality metrics, monitor PR size, idle times, code review quality. I think I would say it's hot topics here right now for the developers.
Now, the deep review is a hot topic among engineering, and how exactly is it measured and how can we do a deep review? And I do agree that sometimes can be kind of hard to understand, but accumulated over hundreds of PRs usually makes sense. And you can, it correlates also with your, usually with your gut feelings of who is doing more code review and who's doing less code review or better code review. Um, but I would say that it is true that management in our days is becoming smarter and smarter, and trying to understand more engineering metrics and celebrate uh, the good things and improve on the bad things. And we do tend to collect almost all the metrics that LinearB provides us, from PR size to code changes to PR opens to issues done, branch done, of course, cycle times, merge frequency, yeah, all the way to story points. And we always say there is no month where everything can go well. So it's a balance between this month we did more merge PRs, but our review that deepness actually decreased a little bit. So it's finding the fine tune um, among the team in how to use this metrics to as a game to basically as function as an engine of a car. And this is what fine tunes us and tells us if we should do a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that. Um, that said, I also think that he also plays with the matureness of the teams. So young teams will be more focused on into the fundamentals and into getting the PR size correctly, getting the cycle time correctly. That implies that you also have a good CI/CD pipeline, and eventually, with time, start going more deep into what is the pickup time, what is the mean time to review, and correlate that with the SLAs that we currently have. Um, that said, I think LinearB also brings like three separate views. So I feel that there's an executive view that you can kind of see it over the dashboard and over the projects. And there's like a polls and team views that can be seen by the team leads or the managers. And then all the other developers can see under the activity what is that they need to do and how are they collaborating with others. Um, so in that sense, I think it's quite complete from engineering all the way to C levels in order to provide the metrics that we're trying to use in our days to measure good productivity and good deliverability. That we all know has been a hot topic for the last 10 to 20 years. What are we actually doing? And how do we know that developers are actually coding?
Absolutely. That's a great point. I think that you make a really good point too about the level of maturity of the organization too, and how you really have to have that level of context. I also think that you make a really good point about depending on the persona or role of the person that's using the tool, how that would affect how they're actually interacting with it and using it to make decisions with it. I would be curious to know sort of more around the routines that you've developed and how your organizations have actually integrated and put Linear B into action in your day to day operations or week to week operation and what that looks like. So, Pini, what does a typical day look for your team that you're overseeing at Shippo when you're using and interacting with Linear B?
Well, I think there isn't much change with LinearB integration. I think our day-to-day operation is still same as is. LinearB kind of silently works in the background, and I think probably the most prominent change would be the what could be notification and that the developers get. And I think that that can be also helpful at times. But then we consciously did not like make we did not want to encourage or at the leadership level we consciously made this decision that uh, we are not going to be focused on each team and each individual and look at each thing every single day or follow up with every team on why is this metric low or why was today uh, a, a slower day for you than compared to last week, right? So that was a conscious cultural decision that we made, just so that when we introduced LinearB, we said to our engineers that, hey, we are rolling this out, but it doesn't mean that we are micromanaging you. It doesn't mean You have to game the system. It's easy if you bring that in and developers think that, the management is uh, checking on you or checking why your commit uh, is is committing faster or why your commit is slower or something, then they can easily game the system. And that's completely the opposite of what we want to do. So, so we make these conscious decisions of we want to get a high level overview of LinearB metrics and just have a basic understanding of team's health and not really interfere in our like every day to day life.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on a few really interesting points there. Ricardo, I'm curious to know how Pismo's day to day has improved since integrating LinearB.
Sure. But first, what Penny said remembered me like, and several times during your forums that we have with our engineers, they asked questions about micromanagement, things like that. So it's a concern that happened here too. But I've been very vocal at that situations, saying that we measure to learn. We don't measure to fire anyone.
That's
So
great.
related to what really improved in our day-to-day on a daily basis, I would say that much less effort is spent today collecting data or getting consensus around how a specific metric should be calculated. And this make available much more energy. Actually, more energy is directed to actually solve the problems. So, for example, if some teams are facing code review issues, they can spend their time training or share best practice instead of arguing if it's really an issue or not, which used to happen in the past. So I would say the real improvement for us is like to free up energy to do what really matters, is which was acting on the data that we are consuming right now.
Yeah, that's great. I think that you brought up a really interesting point, and I can't remember exactly how you said it. I think you said we measure to
We
improve.
measure to learn. We measure to learn. Yeah, I think it's a great phrase.
That's a, yeah, I like
Me-
that was awesome.
measure to improve.
Right.
Is it not? Measure to, I do like, we do measure to improve and not to fire. But it's very curious how, like, once again, the matureness of the teams and the opportunity make things to be completely different on Rabbit. So on Rabbit, it's not like we changed our day to day. This was here from day one. And it wasn't management that brought it down. Even if my title or position is a CTO, I've been coding software since I'm 12 years old. So deep down inside, I'm just a glorified software developer that managed to get promoted multiple times. And they do know it. But this tool was actually brought from the bottoms up. So it was the developers that's always spending time in an Elasticsearch and showing a couple of their managers spending an afternoon trying to pull the information off GitHub from the last 7 years once again. And they said, we have this tool, we found this tool that seems really interesting. So the way we approach it, and because the team is new and we have this opportunity of creating things differently, for us is a game. We take it as a game and we used all of these 15 to 16 metrics. Each squad is quite independent. So each squad has this direction, but there are no rules. There is a framework. So then they use this to improve. Some squads are unbelievably good on code review deepness. Other ones are unbelievably good at never refactoring. They think that they're only doing new code. We all know that there's advantage and disadvantage in every single approach. And the ones that are only doing new code, at some point, they are creating technical debt and they will have to manage it. But once again, independency and autonomy is quite important when it comes to scaling teams. So that said, they see this as a game. And every week, every month, we will display some kind of screenshots. And it's always about this team was the one that created the most PRs. This team was the one that touched the most repos. This person was the one that did the most code reviews, but never who's the worst, because that's the motivating. It's more like it's more like the Emmys on the Oscars. You have 20 Oscars and you can win one of them. Just be good at something, be reasonably good at the rest. and you will be a great team leader and you will complement the rest of the team. So it's more like a game, and it did change the way we see it. And we do, I would say we open it every day. Very worker being is quite extraordinary, but the polls dashboard really show us how many people are contributing to a certain solution. And sometimes it's good to see the team working together. Sometimes it also makes you think, are we putting too many on the same problem? And maybe we should break it down. And also identify the long reviews or the long PRs that are open. And that's quite essential to just get the work moving forward. So we do see it more as a game, and we do kind of utilize the tool almost every day. And people are quite proud very often of their score, of their review deepness score, or their average PR per week, per month, per quarter. Everyone has their own interpretation then of the rules, but it's good to see them just using them to improve themselves and not as a tool to measure performance only and absolutely.
That's awesome. And you highlighted a couple of really interesting points there. Being on sort of like the day to day here with our customers, I think that it's awesome to hear the way that you've approached that culturally there. Um, one thing is that no one wants to be told what they're doing wrong. So the fact that you're highlighting teams that are doing something really well and that incentivizes other teams to want to try to do better and highlighting it that way, I think that that's an amazing approach. Um, one thing that I'm curious to know is around, messaging and rolling this out to your team and encouraging them to, look at these specific, metrics, displaying them as you mentioned, and they're proud of their scores, right? Is there anything that you felt was helpful in terms of messaging this to the team to kind of get them away from the mentality of, micromanaging or highlighting areas maybe that aren't going so well? What
Yeah,
helped there?
I got a little bit lucky because it was a new project. So it was a new opportunity to bring things from scratch. So everyone that I brought on board, and half of the team is in-house and located in Thailand, in Bangkok, but very multinationals with more than 19 different nationalities. And then the other half are freelancers all over the world. So we really went deep into the hybrid working model. And for us, this is a way for us to be able to display with absolutely no doubts where is the work being done and how are we improving and where are we improving or trying to improve or sustain a certain quality. Um, so it was quite easy for us to welcome this because it was a tool to justify the direction that we want to go. That is hybrid work, uh, international, basically autonomous, all about deliverability, not about existing. So it was quite easy for me. I had very little pushback from my team because all of them saw it as, oh, great, another cool tool for us this way, for us to measure almost everything that we're doing. And it kind of also saved us quite a lot of time in other slightly different tools spread across that we had. And maybe even it might not have 100% of all the metrics we used to follow, but we maybe don't need 100%. And the ones that LinearB give us provide a 95%, 99% of the view that we had before with much better granular. So, yeah, it saved us a tons of time in consensus, in discussions. How do you know that this is the right size? I don't. LinearB does. And there's always a good justification to the C levels to push it into a SaaS company. They did a study. It's on their blog. You want to go read it? Oh, no, I believe you. Okay, good. So this is it's now becoming an industry standard, and that's good to be able to say it with clarity and without like it's not my industry standard.
Right. And I think along the same lines of Paulo, um, giving the autonomy to the team and deciding what they want to track and what metric they want to improve brings out the success rather than a top-down approach where you standardize some metrics and work towards it. I think going bottom-up approach is much valuable here.
It takes a longer time. One thing that LinearB was definitely a key part was into decreasing what I call or what is called the value of disappointment. When companies invest in new technical teams, they expect a linear growth And the reality is that it's atomical increments. So that hockey stick curve in that period is what is called the valley of disappointment. And LinearB really helped shorten that valley of disappointment period because we were able right from the beginning to be quite efficient. So we didn't have to go basically by guts until we got overly big, and then we had to apply solutions in order to recover that productivity. Um, Solutions like LinearB and other automations were just there almost from day one. So everyone took them as part of the framework that we have. And that's what allows us then that freedom that we all, and especially developers, enjoy. I totally agree. Tell a developer to come to the office and he will never come. Uh, get beer into the office, a whiteboard, some screens at a big pong table, and they will all be there tomorrow. It's all about creating the environment where they want to collaborate. Then will they do the code in the office or at home? Who knows and who cares? Uh, the code will happen. That's the important part.
That's a great point, and it definitely sounds like it's helped drive accountability internally from sort of like the ground level of like developers who's doing the day to day work up to leadership. Ricardo, is there anything else that you want to add on that topic?
Well, I mostly agree with everything that has been said. But maybe it's my only point that although the team has their ability to choose the metrics they want to follow more, I don't think it's a bad idea to have the leadership uh, saying very plainly and clearly that we value some metrics most. In our case, for example, cycle time, but also the mean time to recover is something that most of the teams use and the leaders take care of that. But yeah, it's just uh, uh, adding this little comment.
Oh, no, I agree. Once in a while, developers will also say like, but what exactly, which metric do you want me to improve? And you will try to promote, okay, I think these ones are the ones I think it's important. You guys choose another two. And everyone kind of like gets their way, but it is a compromising and it is more incentivizing them to view the thing the way we view things than to force them to build the way we think we build
Oh,
things.
sure.
Yeah, I love that you're definitely empowering them to be a part of the conversation, which again, as being on the ground, feel like you're working with my customers day to day. This is definitely a new approach and you're opening my eyes to new things. So really appreciate you educating me on that and that it's worked for you.
It's a very multinational team too. So there was a couple of new tricks, old tricks, and new approaches that we were able to use. And we had to, because culturally speaking, it's quite hard to define where are we with 19 different nationalities, uh, living in Southeast Asia. It's quite interesting to find that middle ground. But I totally understand Ricardo. I work with Latinos and I'm a Portuguese myself of blood. So I know I can only imagine what it is to work with 40 people like me. No, that would be, I think that's why I moved to Southeast Asia. It would be way too late. Um, it's tough. I don't envy you, Ricardo. Like I feel your pain. I feel your pain.
Oh, no worries.
Cool. So that brings us to sort of the last point that I want to cover in this specific topic, which was overall what you have seen to be the most success with LinearB so far, and also what you hope to accomplish in 2023 and beyond. So, success with LinearB and also your mid to longer term goal. Ricardo, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, as Pini remembered, like I really love the phrase, the quote from Peter Drucker that you can't prove what you don't measure, and I think it's a real good one. But I'd say that at some point we did see. I think that by using LinearB, we did things that all seemed very subjective or difficult to quantify, at least for us at Pismo, like code quality or high performance, although we may find thousands of articles and people saying things about that, but to get data about that was, for us at some point, very subjective. Then LinearB made it more objective, more quantifiable, more explainable, and I liked what Paul said. Oh, read the article from LinearB. It explained what the metrics means there. And then that's possible to learn and to replicate across many teams that have. Uh, so as I mentioned, we imagine to learn. And this approach integrates very well with the lean mindset we try to follow at Prism. Build things, then learn with the feedback, inspect, adapt. This applies not only to product development, but also to our system of work. Uh, I'd say an essential part of our development culture is to measure and manage the workflow so we can achieve continuous improvement through small but effective steps in an evolutionary way. I personally uh, uh, like to build things each step at a time. Like I don't like big revolution. So if someone at the company say, "Oh, let's change everything and put a huge bet on this new approach that maybe it's not being tested or not being consolidated in other place. It's not my way of doing things. I prefer small steps, expect, adapt, learn, short feedback cycles every time. So I would say, like, to feed us with fresh and actionable data, that I would say is how LinearB is helping Pismo meet its exponential goals, which are green.
That's a great point. And I think that it also echoes what Paolo said earlier about improvement. Improvement isn't always linear, no pun intended. But yeah, sometimes, you do have to set a goal, iterate on it, go back, talk about it, and really see how things are working. It's not just going to be that necessarily up and to the right, nice looking graph. So I think that that echoes well with what he was mentioning before.
And you have a final, but
Oh, so sorry, just to comment. Sometimes we are creating hypotheses that the data will not confirm. And then we learn, okay, this doesn't work. So let's change the approach. So that's what I mean by being evolutionary. In some sense.
Great point. Paolo, do you have anything else that you want to add to that?
Now I totally subscribe to most of what or everything that Kikon said is atomical increments. And linear BI, the most interesting part was to look at the metrics once you do the first migration and to say, okay, we're going to get to strong cycle time. And it takes time and it takes a lot of time, but it's atomical changes, atomical increments. Some of them we don't even know how we did it. It's just subconsciously we aim into that direction. And once you get there, you get very proud and you want to sustain there. So I would say that um, we've improved in a multiple ways in many metrics. There's a few of them that we can see that we can still do better, and we're aiming for by now exponential improvements because of the learnings of all the other metrics that we had. In 2023, I would say that is the year to sustain. If we are capable of sustaining that velocity, that quality for an entire year, then you have some excellent foundations for the next 5 years, independently of some attrition in the team or not, or some scaling that might need to be done. You have the good foundations for building good software. So improving and then sustaining, I think it's the hardest part. Like everyone says, it's very easy to get 2 Michelin stars. It's very hard to maintain them. Um, so I would say that that's what we're trying to aim to be a 3 Michelin star software development team and to stay that way. And I would say that LinearB will probably going to be a key element for us to measure that success.
I love that. I love the Michelin star reference too, especially being a foodie. Pete,
Yeah.
what about you?
right, right. I think so. Along the same lines, right? Like we've seen this whole data collected for past year, and we made some incremental progress. And now, like going in 2023, we want to just again reflect these data and make some progress and sustain these stages. Can we make sure that we can keep our cycle time as is or make it better? Just make sure we don't go back to worse or things like and everything may not be just improving, right? We might get some insights around like, oh, last year we made a lot of new code changes. We made new work. So now this year, probably we'll have less of new code, but more of refactoring because I guess that's how it's usually you write new code and then you kind of refactor the following year. So we can, yeah, based on these insights, we can also make um, uh, some uh, uh, some decisions or some uh, like projections that going forward we might be seeing more of rework and not less of new code, or our review time. Like we know, for example, our review time is not the best, right? But then right, it's a conscious decision that hey, we are geographically distributed team, and our review time is not going to be like 4 hours or 2 hours or some recommended number, right? Because of our distributed nature, our review times are going to be longer. So, but it is fine. At least we acknowledge that, and we say, okay, that's fine as long as we make faster deployments. We are going in the right track.
That's great. Well, we've spent a lot of time talking about organizational success. Paulo made a great correlation there with talking about the three Michelin stars and really trying to sustain velocity into 2023. But I want to pivot and talk about perhaps the most important trend in the industry right now. And it's a theme at Interact. And that's what we're calling developer experience. For us at LinearB, this means improving developers' lives through tool processes and decisions that empower them to focus on coding and less time spent on things like toil, bottlenecks, and rework. And I want to get a sense of sort of what developer experience means to each of you. Some organizations we're hearing they're bringing in roles specifically to help improve that experience, right? So I want to first hear, open it up to the three of you. What is your definition of developer experience?
Zero boring work. There would be the perfect definition of a software development experience. We don't want to do manual things. We don't want to do repetitive tasks. We don't want to do boring tasks. And we are human, so we do make lots of mistakes, and we love that machines can correct us. So that's where automation comes. Um, Tools like Sonar Cloud that basically are a pre-code review that allow to automate this variable is not assigned. This variable is duplicated. You're missing more than 80% of unit testing. That kind of automation, I would say that helps into developer experience. Um, and that in a nutshell, yeah, zero boring work. I would say uh, it's the ideal utopia developer experience.
Right. I think also along the same lines, there's a correlation between having great internal tooling process and developer happiness, and it's hard to make make a direct correlation, but developers' happiness is based on how efficient the engineering teams are, how productive they are in doing their day-to-day jobs. And for example, what Paulo mentioned around Sonar Cloud, right? Code smells. Like that's gonna like tell the developer that like few years down the lane, this code is gonna get complicated, and you better fix it now than doing it later, 6 months down the lane. So it's all about giving that data and making data driven decisions, and also enhancing developers life every day.
Totally agree. Who hasn't heard a developer saying, "Oh, in my previous company, they did this and that."
Yeah.
It, so I 100% agree with you, and I think it shouldn't be that hard to correlate developers' happiness with internal tool.
Well, I would say I'm learning a lot here today. So I loved what Paul said, what Pepini complimented. I have my thoughts on the topic, but I'd say I'm still a learner on it. I think that developers are users too. Like they use our tools, frameworks, process, and our system of work. That's definitely not an easy task to accomplish to offer this zero boring thing like Tal mentioned. And it appears to me it's a big challenge for engineering leadership everywhere. So I said, I would say I'm still in the beginning of my journey on this topic. I'm still studying it, but so far it's clear to me. In addition to great tooling, lean process, and a culture open to learning and feedback, uh, offering a great experience to our devs as they are knowledge workers. Uh, it appears to me that you need to keep the cognitive load in healthy levels inside the teams. Make sure the work is, of course, challenging, but it can be accomplished in a sustainable pace. This is not new. We have known that in the tech industry for decades, but still a huge challenge. So we are dealing with something that is material. So, and all these dynamic companies trying to build a lot of things at the same time, then at some point we may cross a line where the cognitive load on the teams were not good, and then the developers are going to suffer. So it's the opposite of the beautiful definition that I'll said. So I'm learning on it, but I think it's something related to create to achieve some equilibrium on the stuff.
I would say culture is also very important. Um, Establish your culture and then guide yourself through that culture. All cultures, all strategies have good and bad points. You overly trust people, sometimes they will let you down. You micromanage them. You many times or often you will burn them. But it's all about establishing a culture and then bringing people that are agreeing with your culture and agree with, well, in this case, autonomy, freedom, but direction and unity. So over communication because of the the freedom himself and the autonomy himself brings very often silos between teams. So over communicating is the mitigation factor to 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 try to mitigate that point. But that culture is also, I would say, very important. Of course, have culture with zero boring work. Yeah, it's not going to work either. Developers are privileged people in our days and are able to choose where they go to work and how they work. And I also try to educate them into that. Even if you leave us, choose where you're going to leave. You have a unique opportunity right now in life, so use it wisely.
Definitely sounds like an interesting balance that you have to straddle. Like against you're saying, automation and trying to reduce zero boring work, right? But you're also talking about leadership and culture. You can't just bring in a tool and say, solve this problem, right? It really does require someone that at the leadership level could help to communicate, to understand what the challenges are, and build that culture and improvement while choosing the right tools and things for the team. I'm curious to hear, Paolo, what aspects of LinearB do you feel like you're using to improve developer experience? Is it Worker bee or is it something else? Want to hear a little bit about that.
Worker bee definitely helps to reduce time and effort. Um, but mainly it's a validation of what they are doing good also. It's a validation of what the team is doing good. Um, and I think that brought a lot of inner peace to a lot of people because they now know that they do not need to do the extra the not needed things in order to be well valued inside of the company. But they have now a tool that can tell them what they are doing good. So I think self improvement and self-improvement and just self-responsibility and owning their own tasks, their own work. This helped them because it's a tool like Ricardo was saying, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So asking someone to improve something that you're not measuring is impossible. So I think, yeah, the standardization, unification, and I would say that they gave a lot of peace and mind to developers when it comes to how are we being measured, not only with LinearB, with many other tools, but a confidence in that, in the data itself, and in the standardization and the understanding of how that data is being collected most of the times.
Great. Ricardo, how about you?
Well, from my perspective, I think like this connection between what LinearB offers related to DX quickly gives developers feedback on what they're accomplished or not, where to improve and why, so they can take action without the need to wait for someone else to tell them what to do, to disconnect with this responsibility, this self-realization feeling that they might have. For me, this is a great experience. It empowers the team, empowers the developers. Uh, on the other hand, managers can understand how work allocation is being done. So connecting to what I said on the other question, it's I can, for example, quickly see someone centralizing the tasks. Are all team members performing reviews focused on a field? Uh, why is this person commit code for 7 days in a row when she clearly needs to take some time to rest, to unplug, to be offline? So this is something that the manager sometimes has to do. There's this thing like, oh, managers should, this old image that managers in the past say work, work, work. And nowadays, sometimes it's our responsibility to say, hey, please take care, go rest, unplug, go offline, take some time to do something you love. And I think it's how LinearB connect with this DX.
I mean, burnout is a very real thing, especially after COVID and we were all working remote nonstop. Burnout is a really real thing. So the fact that you highlight being able to utilize it to protect your developers, we're talking about velocity and improvement and, sustaining pace, right? But at the end of the day, we're all human. So the fact that you're utilizing it in a way to be able to tell your team members, hey, you need to go take a break. That's a human aspect that I haven't really heard a lot about. So I really appreciate that point. Pini, what about you? How does that match up with your experience?
Yeah, I think I completely resonate with Ricardo on this. The uh, getting a pulse on your team is quite effective, and also you as a manager can give data driven feedback, and it's not like, oh, because we feel this way, we have this data and we are backing this and saying that, okay, you know, XYZ, you've been working, you've been overworked, or that I see that your PR has been refactored for a couple of times now. How can I help you? And those things um, can be found outside linear bees, but those can be very tricky to find. And linear bee can give you that insight right away. And again, the worker bee, which I personally like as well, because I can get notifications right away if there are any pending PRs from my side, and these things get overlooked. So those things are uh, something something very important.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll appreciate you talking a little bit about that. And really appreciate you all kind of shedding light on a newer topic for us, which is improving developer experience. I think that for my last question, I'd just like to wrap up and ask what each of you personally enjoys the most about our product. So, what is your favorite part of Linear B and why? Maybe Ricardo, you want to start?
Sure. Well, I'm a big fan of the product as a whole. but the benchmarks are definitely my favorite. And that's because it gives us context. It connects us with the big picture and the industry. So when your metrics say you need to focus on something, you just receive a clear path to where you should go to improve. When it says you're elite, for example, then it's a kind of a reward to feel the feeling of work well done. So I love the benchmarks and how it's integrated with some of the metrics. I would say that's my favorite part.
Great. Paula, how about you?
I have to agree. I think that at our level, I guess the dashboard, the big picture is what it matters. And definitely seeing the benchmarks across versus the industry, it gives us this feeling of accomplishment, especially when we can be a little bit above them in some areas. They will be like, oh, how can people just release 2 times a day? We're releasing 20 times a day. We're proud of that. It also makes us wonder, are we releasing way too many times? Yeah, I would say the dashboard is definitely one of my favorite ones. That said, I do like the individual metrics or the individual dashboards that you can create on the metrics. Uh, so yeah, I really like my global metrics dashboard, customized with all the metrics that I want to see. That's quite, uh, I like seeing things on a linear, on a time line base. Um, so that's definitely my second favorite, but the dashboard is my favorite for sure. It's a great,
Penny, you have the final word.
Yeah.
What are your
I have to agree. I think dashboard is the most used functionality of LinearB, and then also the fonts. It is helpful. It gives teams insight. Um, so fonts and again dashboards. Those are the
it
two.
will, it will depend on who you ask. If you ask a PO, he will say the projects. I don't understand anything else. So
Right.
if you are a manager or a team lead, you will say the dashboards and the teams. Maybe if you ask if you ask a team lead, he will definitely say the polls and the team,
Correct.
because that's where he sees his team. But if you ask a
Right.
CTO or manager, the dashboard where you can see the high picture, and if the high picture,
Right.
if the high picture is going the right direction, then the team is going in the right direction. There is no need to go deeper into micromanaging.
Right.
They are managing themselves.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it depends, like what your role is, and LinearB can cater different views depending on the.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And really appreciate you diving into that. Penny, Hello, Ricardo, thank you all for a great conversation today and for sharing all of your stories and insight. It's definitely always wonderful to hear such diverse opinions. And we're incredibly proud to have you as customers at LinearB. I also want to thank everyone in the audience for joining us today. I hope you were all able to learn something valuable from these great speakers. I know I did. And thank you for joining us at Interact. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please consider signing your development teams up for LinearB. It's free for development teams to start out, and you can get started at linearb.io. I hope everybody has a great Interact, everybody. Have a good day.